Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on KCBQ AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis of michaelgaddis.com. This segment of the Michael Gaddis Show is brought to you by SolarFuse. If you are thinking about solar, go to solarfuse.com right now. That's solarfuze.com. Our special in-studio guest today is Brian C. Andrews of the Andrews Law Group. You can see his website at briancandrews.com. He is one of the top construction attorneys in San Diego. Brian, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on, Michael.
Now, Brian, we've known each other for a number of years, and like me, you're a transplant. Why don't you tell us where you come from and a little bit about how you got into construction law?
Certainly, Michael. My background was first in the construction industry. I was a licensed contractor in the state of Virginia, where I was born and spent about half my life. I've spent the other half of my life here in San Diego. Came out here to go to University of California, San Diego, where I'm a proud alumni and alumnus, excuse me. And then I went up to law school in Hastings in San Francisco. And I always wanted to do construction law, having construction as my background and having law as the focus of my studies. It was a perfect fit for me to come out and do construction law. I did so at several large firms, including several here in San Diego, before starting my own practice in 2006, which I've been running for the last decade.
Well, you corrected me a little bit during the break. You're not just a construction defect attorney. You're a construction attorney. So can you explain kind of what a construction attorney does and what a construction defect attorney does?
Absolutely. The phrase construction defect, or in the legal parlance, CD, is a practice that mostly turns on the California 10-year statute of repose. California requires builders of new homes to stand behind their homes for 10 years, which is a long time, longer than in many states. And so a CD industry or construction defect industry has cropped up in California, particularly because of this long statute of repose. More often than not, it's a situation where in the 8th or the 9th year, homes start to suffer from similar defects. You'll see an attorney group come in, usually through an HOA, and try to recruit as many people from the neighborhood as they can who are having these problems. And so a construction defect lawyer is to some degree like a small class action lawyer, in that he has this group of people that are all similarly affected by the same problems in their homes. And frankly, without any offense to anyone who does the work, it is noble work when it's done properly. It's all too often predatory, used to draw settlements out of insurance companies. And so I guess the line I draw between a construction defect attorney and an actual construction attorney is one like myself, who not only has industry experience, but who knows the contracting rules, knows the licensing rules, and who focuses his practice on resolving actual construction disputes in the midst of building, after building, or at any time during the process. As a construction attorney, I've represented owners who have problems with contractors. I've represented contractors who have problems with owners, subcontractors who are fighting with contractors, etc. I try to keep my practice spread evenly, keeps my perspective well adjusted. I'm as aggressive at representing homeowners as I am at representing contractors or subcontractors, where a typical construction defect attorney is always going to be on the side of the homeowner. He's basically going to be handing out a list of things that are wrong, seeking cost to repair, and trying to get insurance settlement. So don't be confused. There are a lot of good attorneys who do construction defect work. They may not be the best attorney for your actual construction dispute. And so I'll give the floor back to Michael by just saying a construction defect attorney to some degree is a one-trick pony, where a construction attorney knows the whole process, has kept himself on both sides of the dispute, and can help homeowners as well as contractors, subcontractors, bond sureties, school districts. I've represented them all, Michael.
Well, let me give you a real-life example of something that I just recently came across. I was showing a house to a buyer in Oceanside, and he's been looking for a view home. So we went to this home, and it sits up on top of this ridge. And what we did is we actually went into escrow on it. And when we received the natural hazard disclosure statement, we found out that this particular lot was in red for high probability of landslides. And when my buyers researched it, because they're those kind of buyers, they found out that the soil under this particular property is susceptible to liquefaction. And so when we challenged the existing homeowner about it, they were saying, Well, I don't know anything about this, but then we talked to the neighbor. The neighbor says, yeah, everybody in the neighborhood got this. We talked to the HOA. First, the HOA wouldn't talk to us. Then they said, well, it's in the hands of the attorneys. So I guess my question to you is this kind of a situation like you would come across, or?
Absolutely, it is. And soils testing and being familiar with soils testing is definitely a skill a good construction attorney is going to have. And from my prior experience as a contractor, it is soils issues, buried obstructions, soil conditions are things that come up both in the new construction process and in the example you've given in the attempt to resell a property. So again, as Michael mentioned, my firm is the Andrews Law Group, and my website is briancandrews.com. And any sort of construction issue you might run into, complex or simple, I could help with. And the example you give is something that would be something I've dealt with many times in cases.
So what is the statute of limitations on something like that? And for those of you that don't know, a statute of limitations is the time that you have to bring an action. What is the statute of limitations? Because this house was an older house. I mean, it was, I think, built in 1992 or something like that. What is the statute of limitations on something like that?
And so again, you get into the differences between a statute of limitation and a statute of repose. Technically, to enforce a contract, you only have 4 years. But if you have evidence that defective work caused damage to property or caused physical injury, those claims do not completely dissolve under the law in California until the 10-year statute of repose passes, which is a little different than a statute of limitation, but the effect is essentially the same. If you were to find any construction defect that caused property damage or physical injury, you've got up to 10 years to try to bring that claim in most instances. Again, statutes of limitation, statutes of repose can present complex legal problems. So I'd always recommend that you talk to me or talk to a lawyer that you trust to analyze that. But if it's strictly a breach of a contract, you only have 4 years. If it's something that evolves from defective construction work, you can have up to 10 years. In the scenario you described, I would think that the builder was probably off the hook for that issue if the house was more than 10 years old from the time it was built. Now, if it went through a major remodeling that involved soils testing or new structural work and it had only been done 4 or 5 years ago, you might still be within a statute of limitation or a statute of repose that would allow you to file a lawsuit in California. But again, every case is different. Analysis of statutes of limitation and statutes of repose require a qualified attorney to help give you advice about that. So, contact one you trust or find me at briancandrews.com and give us a call at the Andrews Law Group.
Well, in that particular situation, we backed out of the contract because of that. My buyers didn't want any part of this type of potential issue. So even though the defense by the homeowner was, well, it's been here this long, so I don't know why everyone's making a fuss about it. We're making a fuss because your house is in a very bright red section of the natural hazard disclosure statement. So that's why we are. That's why we have the natural hazard disclosure statement for all of you people out there. You guys got to look at them. So Brian, why don't you tell us what like a typical client is for you? What's a perfect client for Brian C. Andrews?
Well, probably the perfect client is someone who's running a good-sized construction business, or someone who is a developer who is developing and having a large dispute with a builder or a subcontractor. But frankly, Michael, I don't mind telling you, I try to help everybody who calls me. I have a case going right now with a steel manufacturer who sent over $1 million worth of steel to a Hurricane Sandy relief project out in New York. Didn't get paid some of the extras that the contractor agreed to. And that case is set to go to trial in January. And it's definitely $1 million plus case. I have many $1 million plus cases, I'm proud to say, on my resume. And yet, nonetheless, people call me up with problems that are $4,000 and $5,000 and $10,000 problems. And I strive to help every single one of them. So rather than answer your question, which I already did, about who the perfect client is, I'll say anybody who's got a problem that's worthy of hiring an attorney, that involves construction, involves real estate issues, or involves a contracting problem or a problem arising out of a contract related to real estate or construction, is a perfect client for me. The Andrews Law Group tries to help everybody, whether they've got a 5-figure problem or a 7-figure problem, and we have the skills and the attorneys to help do it.
Well, Brian, we're just about out of time, but why don't you tell us how we get in touch with you if for anybody out there who might need your services?
Sure. One more time, it's the Andrews Law Group. We're here in San Diego. If you were to Google Andrews Law Group San Diego, you would find us at my website, briancandrews.com, Brian spelled with an I. And of course, you could always give us a call at 858-452-5600.
Well, I want to thank my special guest today, Brian Andrews of briancandrews.com. Perhaps one of the biggest concerns that potential borrowers have about reverse mortgages are the costs associated with them. When we get back, I will break down the typical costs associated with reverse mortgages. You are listening to The Michael Gaddis Show on KCBQ AM 1170, The Answer.
AM 1170, The Answer.